So the previous lesson, we have discussed the economic system over there in Europe after the Columbian exchange. Some items were brought from the new world to the old one and vice versa. And it simply enhanced the economic system. And they established and developed it and they name it mercantilism. Then later on, they call it the capitalism. Okay? Then, if you remember, first of all, the European colonists used the natives to work their farms over there and to extract the gold from the mines. Okay? But because of something, the majority of the natives were dead. What was this reason? Do you remember?
Smallpox.
Diseases.
Smallpox.
Diseases, smallpox, malaria, measles. Thank you very much. Because of the European disease, because they have no resistance to these diseases. So most of them were dead. So there was some kind of shortage in labor. So one guy said something about getting the slaves from Africa. What was his name? Do you remember? He was Spanish. He was a priest. Any hint? Any clue? His name was Las Casas. Okay? His name was Las Casas. He said that we have a shortage in labor, so let's bring some African slaves. Okay? But before getting the slaves, there was an alternative. They said there was a chance to get some European workers over there, and they call it the indentured servants. Indentured servants. Okay? Who are them? They are simply poor people who are looking for a better chance. They want to enhance their lives, but they are poor. Of course, in order to travel to the new world, you needed some money, and they were poor. So they created a system. Okay, let's transport them to the new world in exchange, free of charge, of course. In exchange, they have to work over there in the new land, either in farms or in mines, for a set of time. Got the issue? So the European traders will simply take these poor Europeans. They had no money, okay? And they will transport them over, they will pay for them the fees of the transportation in order to transfer them over there to the new land. Okay, free of charge. They will pay simply nothing. In return, they have to work for a set period of time. Is it clear, guys? They call it indentured servants.
Sir, they will work
Yes.
where?
In
Where
the
will they work?
mines, or even the farms.
Okay, thank you.
Laborers, workers. Okay? So if I ask Majid, Majid, are you
Yes,
here? Who are the
I'm here.
indentured servants?
The indentured servants are the servants who worked in mines and
So they came from Africa or from Europe?
no, from Europe.
From Europe. So they have to work. Thank you, Majid. Guys, the indentured servants, they are simply poor Europeans. Okay? They want to enhance their life. So here is the deal. You're going to work for a time. You're going to work for a time. Okay? For a passage to the Americas. Of course, after your time is done, you are free to go anywhere you wish. For example, let's set a set period of time in order to make it clear. For example, the deal is you're gonna work for me for 5 years. Then you are free to go. In return, I will freely transport you over there to the Americas. Got the issue here, guys? This was the deal. I will pay the fees of your transportation, and of course, I will feed you and I will provide you with a shelter over there in the Americas. In return, you're gonna work for me for 5 years, for example. Then, after your time is done, you are free to go wherever you wanna go. They call it the indentured servants. But the problem with the indentured servants, guys, that they were costly. They cost the European colonists a lot. Of course, they used to enslave the natives free of charge. They have free labor. The natives simply will get nothing out of their work. They forced them to work in their farms and in the mines, right? But now, after the shortage of labor because of the European diseases, they created the indentured servant system. But it cost them a lot. They have to pay for their transportation and they have to pay for their living conditions.
يعني مستر they came from America
No,
the new
no,
land?
no, 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 no. They came from Europe. They
Europe
are
or new land?
Europeans. Europeans. Yes, Europeans.
Okay, thank you.
They came, but they were poor. They had no money to pay the transportation fees to go over there to the Americas, to the new discovered land. So the deal that they will be transported to the new discovered land free of charge. They will pay nothing. And in return, they have to work in the farms or even in the mines for a serious period of time, for a certain period of time. Okay? They call it the indentured servants, but they were costly. They were expensive. So they have to look for alternatives. And here came the African slaves. They went to the African continent. Ironically, the African continent, guys, is the richest continent in the world. How it's a rich continent? By all of its natural resources, okay? All the precious natural resources are found in Africa. Diamond, gold, uranium, platinum, all the expensive resources are found over there in Africa. Although it had a lot of natural resources, but it's still the poorest continent in the whole world. Here is the African continent. From which place do you think they will get the slaves? Use your mind a little bit. Here is the world.
western side of Africa?
The western side of Africa. Thank you very much. From this part, guys, especially, let me maximize a little bit. From the western coast of Africa, especially from Senegal to Angola. All of this coast, they will take the slaves from this western coast of Africa. Okay? So do you think that they will politely ask the Africans to come to work for them?
No.
By force.
By force. Exactly. By using force. So here is the word. Okay? Let's imagine the route here. So the slaves from the western coast will go to the new discovered land, will go to the new world. All the resources from the new world will go to Africa or will go to Europe?
لا اكيد يوروب. يوروب يا مستر.
Europe. So here is the first route, the African slaves to the New World, and the resources to Europe. The Europeans will simply supply the African leaders with something in order to give them the slaves. So what was the invention at that time? What was the new material that they found over there in Europe and they had nothing of it here in Africa? Firearms, guns. They used to use spears and wooden sticks in their wars here. But the Europeans had made a deal. They will supply the African leaders with firearms and a lot of European goods. In return, the African leaders will supply these European guys, the European traders, with slaves. So, from Europe to Africa, from Africa to the New World, and from the New World to Europe. It's gonna be the shape of, who's gonna help me here? What is this
Triangle.
shape? Triangle. Thank you very much. They're gonna call it the triangular trait. Okay? So every triangle, guys, has 3 legs. Okay? They call it the triangular trait. From Europe to Africa, European goods and firearms. They will give it to the African leaders, and the African leaders will simply supply them with slaves. They will take the slaves and transport them to the new land, to the Americas. And of course, all the resources, all of the raw materials will go to Europe. What's important to me in this triangular trade system, in these 3 legs of the triangle, this one, the slaves. They call it the Middle Passage. The Middle Passage from Africa to the new discovered world. Keep in your mind that the European traders used a lot of techniques and a lot of ways in order to capture the Africans. So the African slaves were normal people, guys. Maybe some of them were musicians. Some of them were, there was some kind of education here. They were not ignorant. They had a little bit of education. So some of them were doctors, lawyers, servants,
Mr.
or musicians, chefs, cooks. Yes.
Mr. Didn't we say that the slaves came from America, from Europe? Why it is written here from Africa?
Keep in your mind, my friend, that when I told you about they used to get poor Europeans from Europe to the new discovered world before the Atlantic slave trade, they were not slaves. They were Europeans, but they were
Oh,
poor. They want to enhance their life. They want to get a second career over there in America. But they were poor. They had no money to pay for the transportation fees. Okay, so they got the deal that they will be transformed over there. They will be transported to the new discovered land free of charge. They will pay nothing. In return, they have to work for a specific time. Let's say 5 years in order to make it easier for you. So they have to work for 5 years over there in the new discovered land in order to pay nothing for their transportation. They are free to go. After their time is done, they are free to go to any place in the Americas. But it cost them a lot. They were expensive. So the colonists over there, for example, in the new land, have to pay for their transportation fees and have to pay for their food and have to pay for their shelter to provide a place to live in over there in the new land. So they were expensive. So they didn't continue with this issue with the indentured servants. So they thought about a new idea, and they created and they started the enslavement, and they started the Atlantic slave trade. Okay, so guys, the
Okay,
Africans,
Mr. Thank you.
the Africans, welcome. The Africans were normal people. They were simply kidnapped. They used to have some kind of enslavement trades where the European traders marching or walking over there in Africa, and they simply capture all the Africans they can see. Then they will tie them with ropes or with something, and they will put them in ships. And of course, the living conditions of in these ships were bad. They were overcrowded. Do you imagine that during the transportation, the journey, by the way, will take from 3 to 6 weeks, according to the speed of the wind. During this journey, of course, they will be at the bottom of the ship. They will be at the deck, not on the surface. Do you know why?
Because yeah, mister, they can revolt and they will take control of the ship and go back.
Maybe, yes. Or they can simply jump. They can jump from the ship, and they went back to their homeland. So they used to keep them at the bottom of the ship or on the deck. Then later on, every couple of they used to get them from the deck to the surface, and they ask them to dance, and they play for them some music. Why do you think?
Mister, so it breaks their will, يعني.
Sorry?
It breaks their will, you know, يعني when اللي هو I teach you to obey me or you follow what I say وكده.
It's a point of view.
Another thing
Whoever,
maybe to raise their morale so they don't become angry.
regarding this moral issue, from their own point of view, from the European perspective, slaves are property. They had no opinion. They had no rights. It's your own, they are your own personal property. Like owning a pet, of course, but of course, by having a pet, you will treat him kindly. Okay? But for slaves, no, they treated them as they were cargo, property, goods. They had no rights at all. So why do you think they asked the slaves to dance every couple of days?
Their muscles, yeah, mister. Because if you
To
say you
stretch,
place it down.
yes,
Mister,
to stretch their muscles. It's a point of view. Thank you. Yes,
Mister, so they can like tell them that I own you and you will do what I say. So dance.
showing authority and power. Yes,
To cope with the bad conditions.
no, they had no rights, not to enhance their bad conditions. Let me tell you something, guys.
Mister, to
The-
amuse them, mister.
To amuse them, to make fun of them,
Yes, to mock them, يعني. That they are
to
less.
mock them. Let me tell you something, guys.
Tell us,
The
mister.
living conditions at the bottom of the ship were bad. Every slave have to stay in a specific place, so he cannot either stand or nor sit. There is no room for him. Okay? They used to put all of them in a small place. Then they will ask them in regular basis to go to the surface and start to dance, simply to know that they are still alive. So they will, after asking them to go over there to the surface of the ship, some of the Europeans will go downstairs to the deck So the dead people will be simply taken out of the deck and be thrown in the ocean. Got the issue? Of course, some of them will be dead. Normally talking, 20% of every shipment will be lost. Of course, we are talking about human beings here, guys. So if they are transporting 10,000 per ship, this is gonna mean that 2,000 African slaves will be dead during the transportation process. Okay, guys? So they ask them to dance at the surface of the ship in order to make sure that they are still alive. Once they reached their destination, the new discovered land, they will be sold in an auction. So there was an auction to sell your cargo, to sell the slaves. Try to imagine that maybe a man and his wife, okay? Both of them will be sold, not to a single place. Maybe the man will go, for example, to Mexico, while the female will go to Peru, according to the buyer. So they treated them as property, and every one of them has a document. So you are, by law, you are my personal property. You have to obey me. So they usually looked for craftsmen, for workers. For example, if the slave was a carpenter, for example, so he will be sold in an high price. On the other hand, if he can do simply nothing, if he had no craft or he can do he cannot do anything, he will be sold in a cheaper price. The females used to be sold and do all the domestic work, like cooking, cleaning, anything inside the house, while the males will simply go to the farms and mines. So the living conditions of them were bad. Do you have any idea how long the Atlantic slave trade lasted? For how many years?
Maybe 200?
400.
400. Any other option?
200 maybe?
200. Thank you very much. In fact, Yolad, it lasted for 200 years, from the 1400s to the 1600s. Sorry, from the 1600s to the
Till the
1800s.
18,
Yes.
where Lincoln came.
Yes,
Civil War.
exactly. Exactly. From the 1600s to the 1800s. For complete 200 years, they used to get the slaves from Africa. So let's suppose, or let's imagine, if you are a slave and you are transformed from Africa to the new discovered land after being sold as a property in the auction. What are you gonna do? You will work.
Run.
I will try to run away.
So, of course, you will try to escape because you are not a property, you are a human being. So you will try to escape, or you can't escape. Let's imagine. Or what you gonna do?
I will kill myself.
Kill yourself or to kill your owner?
Yes, revolt. Slave revolt.
Yes, exactly. I will revolt, or I will kill my owner. I will try to kill him. Okay, what about the third option?
خلاص, you just obey بس.
Obey, or to slow down your work a little bit.
Yes, but then they will beat you.
Of course, you'll be beaten, but I will work in a slow motion. Got the idea?
Yes.
Okay, guys, I think our lesson is done at 11:15. Do not forget about the quiz tomorrow, inshallah, guys. Try to do your best. And for those who didn't take the first quiz, I will tell them about the time of the retake. Thank you very much, guys. Until we meet again, have a nice time. Assalamu alaikum.